Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News on 3FM. My name is Beatrice Adu. This news is also live on Kesmi 107.1 FM and streaming live around the world at 3news.com. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Concerns rise over President's failure to address corruption in his State of the Nation address. We will hear from Information Minister Designate Fatimatu Abubakar, who argues the President cannot be held accountable for institutions letting people off the hook, supposedly on corruption-related matters. Also, electricity tariffs to see a more than 6% reduction for some consumers effective April 1. We have details with no price changes expected for water. Much later, Supreme Court dismisses a case filed by advocacy group Child Rights International seeking to compel government to come to the aid of street children. Plus, we'll head to the central region and bring you that story about traditional authorities in Gomoa-Fete area determined to regain control of Buduburam lands as demolition, which has rendered hundreds homeless, continues. Thank you very much for joining us. President Akufo-Addo on Tuesday, February 27, delivered the State of the Nation address to Parliament as mandated by the Constitution. The President, during his address, touched on various sectors of the economy, from agriculture, roads and transport, education, foreign affairs. But one area which the President failed to talk about is the fight against corruption, which was a key campaign promise during his 2016 and 2020 electioneering period. Ghana scored 43 out of a possible 100 in the latest Corruption Perceptions Index released by Transparency International. In the last 4 years, Ghana has maintained a score of 43 out of the 100. Ghana's best CPI score in the past 10 years was in 2014 when it scored 48. Let's engage anti-corruption campaigner on this. Adam Senano is co-chair of the Citizens Movement Against Corruption. He joins us live. Good afternoon to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
And thank you for having me.
Mr. Senano, were you surprised that the President made no specific mention of corruption fight in his speech yesterday?
Yes, it is surprising. I mean, the issues related to corruption have become so important that I wouldn't have assumed at any point that would have a State of the Nation address that did not cover that area.
And what about the argument that probably he's spoken about it enough and we are seeing some changes, as government proponents may argue?
No, I don't think that would be worth, following or accepting. I mean, truth be told, it seems more like the President and his script writers or handlers have lost an appetite for talking about corruption and corruption-related matters. I mean, the figures that we have and things that are going on are such that one could not miss the fact that it was not there in the State of the Nation address. So I don't see how one could assume that, there's something that has gone well substantively enough so that you would drop such a topic. No.
Aside from the fact that you think the President might have lost appetite in terms of talking about it, what do you think could be the other reason Mr. President didn't talk about it yesterday?
Clearly, when politicians speak, usually they want to talk about things they are comfortable about. Clearly, therefore, there is a disquiet. The President and his people must know that we are not doing well in this fight, and so they don't want to talk about it. Otherwise, any politician in an election year will be speaking to the things that they understand will give them, mileage. And so to the extent that it doesn't feature at all, clearly they don't think that this is one of the things that will contribute and add value to making sure that they win their campaign or their elections, and so they've dropped it.
Mr. Senano, I want you to hold on to listen to this interview the Information Minister designate Fatimatu Abubakar granted me some hours ago on what he believes the president or the government has done on corruption. And then I'll come for your brief thought before we end the conversation. Please hold on and listen.
We cannot just, for instance, if you interviewed one individual, if you interviewed 10 people, 20 people out of a country of 32 million, and the purpose was to gather perception, we cannot use that as the kind of nominal data that you will require for, like us in a proper research as we do for the Living Standard Survey or others, to collect actual data for the purpose of
so
research.
You don't agree with the fact that
they have let us, and the understanding we get is that they measure perception of corruption from members of the public and not actual corruption.
Therefore,
and I will stick to that and not speculate or use an incident or two. Of course, I am a Ghanaian. I am not alien to some of those issues coming up in public discourse. But I'm saying if we want to do a qualitative analysis of the data on the ground, it may not be sufficient that a few interviews for the purpose of gathering public perception, we say that is why we are here.
Therefore, you do not agree that we are deteriorating when it comes to corruption?
We haven't deteriorated.
You don't agree?
Research did not point. The 43 points that we've been over a period, of course, yes, the perception has not improved, but it is not a reflection that over the period we have deteriorated. Let us not make it as if the president is the complainant, he's the judge, he's the prosecutor, he's everything. We are in a dictatorship. He can just say, I heard this person collected or bribe or gave bribe. I have taken the laws into my own hands and therefore I've done this. We work within a democracy, and one characteristic is that we have institutions. The Constitution has mandated institutions like SHRAJ to deal with complaints. We have the Special Prosecutor's Office, which the President himself set up, advocated for, and has provided bursary support for the fight against corruption. We have the Criminal Investigation Division of the Ghana Police Service. We have the IOCO. They run the day-to-day operations and take technical decisions. Collectively as a country, we should encourage and empower those institutions to act without fear or favor. And as a politician, to take personal accountability that I will make sure I am not found wanting by being a perpetrator or an enabler of any corrupt act.
You think he hasn't been an enabler?
But the president hasn't been. And the evidence is shown in his commitments, not just to the institutions of corruptions, but said it publicly. I haven't received bribes. I am not corrupt. And I am yet to see someone come up with a case. So beyond that, he cannot go and sit in the offices and micromanage those institutions. And the Special Prosecutor's Office is still in court with some government appointees. The Northern Development Authority is in court one way or the other. And there's been instances that those institutions have initiated investigations against appointees. If the institutions come out to say that upon investigation, this person has been able to show cause that they didn't do A, B, and C, or they followed the laid down procurement procedures and there were no infringements, it is not the president that has let the person off the hook.
That was Information Minister Designate Fatimatu Abubakar. Mr. Senano is still on the line with us to wrap up our conversation. Your brief thoughts on her submissions?
Well, first of all, I mean, yes, we cannot say that the government hasn't done anything. I mean, the resources have been given to agencies, anti-corruption, etc. The OSP has been set up, is working. However, within the context of the way they championed anti-corruption in the 2015-2016 period and ensuing, one was expecting much more in terms of a very robust support at all times, and that this would be the highlight of every engagement, every major engagement of the government.
So for you, they promised more than they've delivered? Absolutely.
So, I mean, they should not run away from the fact that, look, the campaign promise that were made, the entire election rode on the back of anti-corruption in 2015-2016. And so they should not expect Ghanaians to be looking away or expecting anything less than making sure that when corruption has not seemed to have been improved in terms of the data that we have, we will not have our president speaking to it and telling us what new strategies, what new efforts. You don't just give up because you think you have done something.
We'll have to end it here. Thank you very much. And that was Adam Senanu. He's co-chair of the Citizens Movement Against Corruption. Let's head to the courts. And the country's apex court has dismissed a case filed by Child Rights International against the Attorney General on child streetism. The plaintiff, Bright Appiah, was seeking the apex court to declare that the government is in breach of Articles 15.1 to 13.1 and 35.4 of the 1992 Constitution for not ensuring that children receive a special protection against exposure to physical and moral hazards as enshrined in the Constitution of Ghana. But today, February 28, a 7-member panel of justices presided over by Chief Justice Gertrude Tokonu indicated in the judgment that the action was dismissed due to the failure of the plaintiff to properly invoke the jurisdiction of the court. In the writ filed on March 3, Executive Director of the Child Rights International, Bright Appiah, said that child streetism posed a threat to the nation's security and urged the court to compel the Attorney General to resolve the ageless phenomenon. And Bright Appiah joins us live on the line now. Good afternoon to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good afternoon.
The Supreme Court says you failed to properly invoke the jurisdiction of the court. Your first reaction to this?
Oh yes, we
of course they've made that pronouncement and clearly
we are okay with it. And once it has to do with jurisdictional issues, the Supreme Court also made it clear that yes, indeed, we didn't invoke the jurisdiction properly. However, there is a merit in the case, so we are waiting to get the judgment from the court, and whatever it is that they have advised on, we would look at it properly, and then whatever the need is, we will still go back, because they were emphatic that the case that we have presented to them, there is a merit in it, but however, on the basis of technicalities, we didn't appeal.
They expressed your opinion. So for that matter, I'm sure the lawyers will study the case.
So therefore, if they go back to the Supreme Court.
Let's get this clarity. You're going to the court. Of course, you still see merit in it, and your argument is that we need to take these children off the street. This is primarily under the Ministry of Gender and Child Protection. So how is the AG coming in here in achieving the purpose you want?
Well, it's a social issue, and if you look at the kind of structure that we have a number of institutions handling issues that relates to the environment. So we cannot limit our case to a particular ministry. We want to see how the system itself can work to protect the right of children. That is why we targeted AG, so that if there is a proper outcome, we can look at all the institutions that matter to deal with this particular issue. So we are not suing AG per se, but AG is organization or is an institution that represents the state on matters of law. So clearly, targeting them, I do not think that we are wrong in that regard. And as I indicated, it is not as we see that there is some kind of merit in the case, but it was also declared by the Supreme Court that there is a merit in the case that represented to them. However, we didn't come to them properly. So we just look at all the technicalities. And if there is a need that we have to target a specific institution, we will do so, depending on what they've written. So once we get the judgment, we should be able to advise ourselves as to what we need to do moving forward.
Before you go, Mr. Appiah, one other argument that comes up in this case is getting the people who are behind putting the children on the street. What do you seek to get in that direction as well?
Yeah, I think that if you had the opportunity for the Supreme Court to look at the substance matter, I'm sure all these things would have been clear for us to have a way forward in terms of how to deal with even those who recruit, those who transport, and those who engage children on the street and all that. So, and unfortunately, we didn't get that opportunity because of the issue of jurisdiction. So, if I'm to look at it purely from the social point of view, we would discuss that. But one is a matter of law, if you get the Supreme Court to make a pronouncement on it, that will be more better. So we still want to handle this case, and I can assure you that we will definitely go back to look at the issue.
Thank you very much. We'll end it here. And that was Bright Apia. He's the Executive Director of Child Right International, giving us that understanding clearly that he'll be going back to court to ensure that his case goes through. You're still here on the Midday News on 3FM with me, Beatrice Adu. Our top story concerns rife over President's failure to address corruption in his State of the Nation address. We heard from Information Minister Designate Fatimatu Abubakar, who argues that the President cannot be held accountable for institutions letting people off the hook supposedly on corruption-related matters. When we come back, we'll bring you that story about the PRC reducing tariffs for electricity. Stay with us.
Freezer, get the abba. Adama for the abba. A freezer. Adama, a Adama, Adama. Metimosua, my sorry. Canino, Obo Moasia. I do prefer Nobium Unum and San Lassa 9. I don't know what to do. Adama for Adula, someone who said, yet the Adruba Cope, a ship will be a high technology. I could for freezer. When Kwan, and once open your 15 letters. No fugum, what ya no fugum. What the boss here, if we be any of us, you, equity self, over Timono. Then we sure say, woman shown task here. No masena for no freezer, power up a day. Freezer,
Basia, a basson do so among Amoniaji.
Omtina me, Miwasika, Omtina me, but you may not do a some doom. Adama, with that Adama, no queer. Adama, you can't resist.
Ubenya Adama West Africa for a dream, or baby bear a tongue cry on who you. I say, Kayona Kinkai in Choya, a dream.
You're so here on the Midday News with me, Beatrice Adu. You're welcome back. Now, the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission has announced a 6.5% reduction in electricity tariffs for residential consumers. This was announced in a statement signed by Executive Secretary Dr. Ishmael Aka. PRC says the marginal tariff reduction of 6.56% will benefit residential consumers within the consumption bracket of 301 kilowatts per hour and above. Dr. Eric Osabote is the Director in charge of Research and Corporate Affairs of the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, PRC. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Osabote. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Just a minor correction. My name is Obuti.
Yes. Thank you very much, sir. First, let's find out what went into the marginal reduction of 6.56% in electricity tariffs.
Hey, Beatrice, thank you very much for having me. And 6.5 is not marginal. It's quite huge in terms of electricity pricing. And some of the factors that influenced that previously, as I spoke about, are the generation mix, the inflation, exchange rate, and the fuel pricing. So if we look at all these four factors are looking downwards. They are not on the rise. So if you put those four factors in our computation, we came up with a reduction of 6.56 for and above bracket for residential customers. And likewise, non-residential customers and industrial customers have also equally had a reduction in their tariffs.
So, I mean, the 6.65 you talk about, you also mention the bracket in terms of the consumers who are within the consumption bracket of 301 kilowatts per hour and above. Are you able to practically tell us what categories of residential consumers are in this bracket?
Yeah, in Ghana, we do have what we call multiple dwelling, or mostly we call them compound houses. And in these houses, we have all of them hooked onto 1 meter, and that pushes their consumption to the higher bracket. Now, if these consumers don't get a relief, obviously they will pay more. So the people who are in this bracket actually are quite a lot, and between the 301 and above bracket, those people actually needed that relief. So we gave the relief to those people as well as the industrial customers. So a lot more people have been
affected by the reduction in the tariffs.
So what I mean is, would there be, for instance, people who have just a fridge, a television, have lights on? I mean, the people with these basic electrical gadgets.
The consumption will depend on individuals. It's an individual thing. So depending on how much or the electrical gadgets that you have and the efficiency of the electrical gadgets, that is what will determine your consumption. For instance, if you are in a lifeline bracket, 0 to 30, you can use, let's say, 3 LED bulbs. You can use a fan. You can use a TV. You can iron for 4 hours in a month. So those are the things which will determine. If you have a fridge, a deep freezer, you have air conditioners, obviously that pushes you into a higher bracket. So it's on individual basis, depending on the electrical gadgets that individuals have.
We don't seem to have gotten any information on water. Is there any decision on it?
Water, there's no change in the tariffs. It still remains the same.
Thank you very much. We'll have to end it here. And that was Dr. Eric Obute. He is the Director in charge of Research and Corporate Affairs at the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission. Thank you for speaking to us now. Let's take you to the Central Region and specifically Buduburam, where there was a demolition exercise this morning. Occupants of structures demolished at Buduburam camp, mostly Liberian refugees, say they are traumatized following the demolition. Affected persons have now taken shelter in a school nearby. The Ghana Refugee Board is ready to offer support to some Liberian refugees who they claim were exempted during the implementation of the cessation clause, where they were allowed to stay due to their peculiar circumstances. My colleague George Queenin is there. He joins us live on the line. George, are you able to tell us what's happening, especially when these refugees seem to be taking shelter in a school?
Yeah, Beatrice, thanks for having me. And actually, this very demolition was supposed to start a long time ago because the chiefs have been calling on government to help them with the demolition. And it has all proven futile. So it's a reason they are taking charge of this very demolition. And for them over the years, this place has become a den for nefarious activities, drug peddling, prostitution, and just name them. So they are really concerned about this because the bad name, the tagging and all that, they are not comfortable with that. So they are here, their kids are here who are supervising this very demolition. So after they demolish this place, they will give it to government to construct a market for them. Just like we have the Dubai Art Circle, they want this place to be a version of New York. And so, yeah, here supervising this. So that's what it is. They want to use this for a useful purpose, which is the market space.
A version of New York. We'll be hearing from the chiefs, but are you able to give us a summary of what they said beyond what you just told us?
So for the chief, like I said, the name tag is not the best because ever since this place was announced to be demolished for redevelopment, there have been, resistance, fierce resistance and all that. So it has led to the death of 5 people, including police officers. And so even police officers coming here to maintain law and order, they don't want it because they fear for their life. So it's a heavy place. If you can't get personal, you can see through it. It's very heavy. You see, lots of criminals here, and so it's a reason they want to rid them of these, of these people, and then, give this place out for a useful purpose. This is what the Odiko of Gomafete has to say. Nana Kwamensa the second.
Of Gomafete, and why did you, embark on this exercise?
Oh, we are embarking this exercise because of the unprecedented exercise which is going here, as well as we are helping government to construct the road. The one of good construction is going on. We need to get a place for the market women. Why? Because when we refuse to place the market women somewhere, how are you going to help the government to construct the road? So our main objective and that is purpose. The purpose is that we want government to develop what? The road.
So you're not giving to any private developer for estate?
No.
And you heard the traditional leader of Gomoa Fete, Nana Kwamensa II. Earlier, you heard our reporter George Queenin bringing us updates from the Buduburam area. Now, leadership of the forum, comprising 8 labor unions, are in a crunch meeting to discuss arrears owed by government on pensions. These 8 labor unions include Ghana National Association of Teachers, National Association of Graduate Teachers, Coalition of Concerned Teachers, Civil and Local Government Staff Association, Association, Ghana, Judicial Service Staff Association of Ghana, JUSAC, Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association, among others. They will also discuss issues about past credit to be paid by SNIT to the registered schemes. Daniel Opoku is our Labour correspondent. He joins us live on the line. Daniel, what more can you tell us? Daniel. Okay, we seem to have lost Daniel there. We'll try and reconnect to him so we are able to bring you update from that meeting. But let's bring you this ahead of that. Unhealthy lifestyle resulting in stroke is said to be the cause of death at Koforidua Central Hospital in the Eastern Region. Medical Directorate of the Health Facility, Director of the Health Facility, Dr. Ako, who disclosed this at the annual performance review in Koforidua, said available data point to a shift in the parting of mortality from communicable diseases to non-communicable diseases.
Lifestyle diseases such as hypertension, diabetes, and related issues of obesity and others have taken the front burner, and that is how come we are seeing a lot of mortality. So if you ask me, I would say that the underlying cause of this stroke that we see usually has to do with the two lifestyle causes that we have, which is hypertension and diabetes. And it is because the two of them, when they combine their powers like Captain Planet, they turn into, something else. That is how come it's very important that. And this same two diseases are the leading cause of organ damage like chronic kidney failures and all that we see. And why is it so? Yes, you may be right, because quite a number of times patients or people in the community do not report quickly.
You heard the medical director of the health facility in the Eastern region, that's the Koforidua Central Hospital, Dr. Akwakuto Ampao. Let's return to our Labour story about that crunch meeting being held by Labour unions. Daniel Opoku is there for us. He joins us live. Daniel, hopefully you can hear us. What can you report from this meeting? Unfortunately, our lines are not helping us. We've lost Daniel again. Now, let's bring you some other issues. And the Governing Council of the CK Tedam University of Technology and Applied Sciences in Navrongo has been urged to ensure impartiality, fairness, and the highest level of openness in the recruitment process to fill the Vice Chancellor and Registrar positions.
Serious concerns regarding potential biases and favoritism in the recruitment process. Allegations suggest that corrections were permitted to be made to an applicant's submission after the deadline, which will undoubtedly compromise the impartiality and equity of this process. Another thing is controversial possession of email correspondence. Accusations are surfaced regarding the chairman's potential possession of email correspondence intended for the committee despite not being a member.
And you heard a representative of a concerned youth group in Navrongo talking about the need to have impartiality, fairness, and the highest level of openness in the recruitment process to fill the Vice Chancellor and Registrar positions of the CK Tedam University of Technology and Applied Sciences. We're going to try for the last time to see whether we can get Daniel Opoku on the line. Daniel, are you able to tell us what's happening at that meeting? All right, we couldn't get Daniel, but that's how we'll end the news here on 3FM. Our top stories: concerns arrive over President's failure to address corruption in his State of the Nation address. We heard from Information Minister Designate on her thought. Also, electricity tariffs to see a more than 6% reduction for some consumers effective April 1. We brought you details. And Supreme Court dismisses case filed by advocacy group Child Rights International seeking to compel government to come to the aid of street children. My name is Beatrice Adu. Thank you very much for joining us today. Log on to 3news.com for more news. Have a good afternoon.
FM 92.7 Urban Lifestyle Radio Station. Accra gets busy on this frequency. 92.7 3 FM.
Hello, good afternoon. It's time now for Business Daily on 3FM 92.7. Coming up this afternoon, international rating agency Fitch projects Ghana to complete external debt restructuring by June 2024. Also, experts criticizes the use of GDP growth to measure Ghana's economic performance.
Talking about GDP, and the size of the economy has more than quadruple, and the rest of how much of that is reflecting in the pocket of the average Ghanaian?
Plus, a former finance minister, Seth Tekpe, cautions government not to be complacent in its debt management.
If we're doing the primary balance, we're good at indicating that we are doing well, I can assure you that we would have settled the domestic debt and would have started issuing 3-year bonds.
My name is Menu Afo. We have details of these stories and more lined up for you. Stay with us. Let's start off with the economist and financial analyst Professor Godfrey Bokpin, who is calling for a move beyond measuring economic performance with GDP growth rates. In an interview with 3 Business, Professor Bokpin called for better metrics that measure performance in a wide range and manner that benefits every citizen and also reflects in the revenue envelope, as money plays a crucial role in economic management.
You see government every day talking about GDP, and the size of the economy has more than quadruple, and the rest of how much of that is reflecting in the pocket of the average Ghanaian? Okay, so we've moved beyond GDP.
What we have seen since 2020 is nothing but state-sponsored robbery. Because the sole purpose of taxation is not just to raise tax revenue.
If you understand the broader contours of taxation and what it serves, both as an enabler and also as a handle for collecting tax, you will not celebrate e-levy. It doesn't matter how much it brings, because what it will do in the medium to the long term may be far more than how much you think you are raising today. Meanwhile, if you had allowed the sector to grow in the next 5-10 years, you could actually raise multiple times how much you are losing today. So tax itself can be an investment. If you see taxation as a hammer, then you will tend to treat everything else as a nail. But taxation is not a hammer. It's an important fiscal tool which you can use to create wealth, to build an economy.
You heard the voice of Professor of Finance at the University of Ghana Business School, Professor Godfrey Bokpin. Now, rating agency Fitch has projected that Ghana is likely to conclude its external debt restructuring program with the Eurobond holders by June 2024. Fitch, the UK-based rating agency, asserts that the external debt restructuring program will not have a significant impact on Ghana's banking sector. President Akufo Addo, in his State of the Nation address, further emphasized Ghana's commitment to concluding the external debt restructuring, a requirement for securing the third tranche of IMF bailout funds. Rating agency Fitch has projected Ghana to complete its external debt restructuring by June 2024. Their assessment anticipates a successful conclusion of the Eurobond restructuring program with commercial creditors by the end of the second half of 2024, following the January agreement with bilateral creditors. Fitch also projects that the restructuring with official creditors is not expected to significantly impact banks due to their limited exposure to Eurobonds. However, loan quality faces potential threats from broader economic impacts of the sovereign debt situation. Banks' high exposure to local currency government bonds relative to their capital makes their solvency sensitive to Ghana's domestic creditworthiness. In essence, while the Eurobond restructuring may not directly impact banks, their overall health remains linked to Ghana's broader economic and financial stability. And that was a 3 Business News Desk report. Away from that, the Importers and Exporters Association of Ghana has expressed its disappointment over the president's silence on the high cost of doing business in the country. According to Executive Secretary of the association, Samson Asaki Awingobit, businesses are collapsing due to high taxes and tariffs, and we're hopeful that government would have acknowledged the problem and done something to lessen the burdens of businesses.
The president was unable to mention a very specific rate that today, as a Ghanaian or as a business person, if you are going to the commercial bank to borrow to do business, at what rate? Because you and I are very much aware that the interest rate is above 30%, which is not good at all for the business community. Number 2, the president could not talk about the inflation rate because, of course, whatever that we bring, it has a very negative impact on the inflation. And so if inflation is hovering between 23.5, then it's a cause to worry. Again, the president could not talk about the prime rate. You know, the president is always found knocking his chest to tell you that they've been able to manage the micro and the macroeconomic stability and making interest rate very robust, making inflation rate coming down, making exchange rate. And of course, he did not mention exchange rate because we also know that as we speak, with the $600 million and the $300 million World Bank and the $900 million Cocoa syndicated loan, we were expecting that $1 to the Ghana cedi should be hovering around between 8, 9, and 10 cedis.
And that over there was Executive Secretary of the Importers and Exporters Association of Ghana, Samson Asaki Awingobit. Also, a former finance minister, Seth Tekpe, is cautioning government from being complicit in its debt management. According to him, the removal of arrears from the overall debt stock has the tendency to spell doom for the economy in the medium to long term. He was speaking at a media dialogue on Ghana's IMF program organized by the PFM Tax Africa Network.
Next review, we look and read, we should be cognizant of the fact that some measures are qualified, and the fact that we are doing well may not necessarily mean. If we're doing the primary balance, we're good at indicating that we are doing well, I can assure you that we would have settled the domestic debt and would have started issuing 3-year bonds. But because the primary balance is not adequate, because what is keeping you out of the market is because you are owing them. You are owing them not just interest, but you are owing principal. So the primary balance is not enough. You have to do more, And we haven't even added debt repayment here. We are only talking about arrears. So the tendency to leave out arrears, whether it's bailout costs, whether it is FinSec costs and others, and say we are doing well, has hurt us before. And we must be very mindful, that it could hurt us again.
Seth Tekpe is a former finance minister and tax consultant at PMF Africa. Now, before we go at top stories, international rating agency Fitch projects Ghana to complete external debt restructuring by June 2024. Also, experts criticize the use of GDP growth to measure Ghana's economic performance. Plus, a former finance minister said Tekpe cautions government not to be complacent in its debt management. We brought you details of these and more. Kindly log on to our website, www.3news.com, for more stories. My name is Menu Afo. Do stay tuned. Black Rasta will soon join in for Urban Blend.